Listen, it's bad for Denver, but because it happened almost simultaneous with a worse trade and worse contract with Deshaun Watson, I think it's kind of mitigated. And so because just historically, I don't think people can say this is the worst trade. It's like, well, the Deshaun trade, they gave up more and paid him more, and they can't get rid of him.
Nick Wright said that the trade between Cleveland and Houston mitigates the deal between Denver and Seattle. I don't know about you, but I don't know if I agree with that. But then again, though, he may be onto something. Let's talk about it.
I step in the room, they be know the same. I'm a Texas boy, but I'm from Eden. J-Man, where with that boy Gordon?
Yo, what is going on? It's your boy, Westside Izzy P. You are locked into a brand new episode of Westside Sports. So I had this thought come up the other day. Matter of fact, I was listening to Nick Wright on First Things First. I was watching an episode. It was like from yesterday or day before. And they were talking about Russell Wilson being released by the Denver Broncos. And he said something very interesting. That caught my eye. He said that this trade looks bad for Russell, but it's mitigated by the fact that the Cleveland Browns probably made the worst trade for a guy that hasn't played a full season in the 2 years that he's been there. And it got me wondering, did Cleveland have the worst trade? I know it's been talked about by a lot of people. A lot of people have, had their opinions about the Deshaun Watson situation, the trade that the Browns made with Houston, and everybody's pretty much made the claim saying that, oh, that was the worst trade ever. He hasn't played the way that he played back in Houston, and he really hasn't produced the way the Browns have hoped for. But then you look at the Broncos and Russell Wilson, and you look at what happened with them. Like, they traded a pretty big package the same way that Cleveland did. Russell Wilson was in Denver for the same amount of time that Deshaun Watson's been there. And the numbers, although they're better than what Deshaun Watson has in those 2 seasons that he's been in Cleveland, the results have pretty much been the same. The only difference is Denver hasn't been to the playoffs. Cleveland went to the playoffs, but it wasn't behind Deshaun Watson as QB1. So let's go ahead and break it down. I'm going to just go ahead and just give y'all the facts, and I'm going to let y'all decide on who had the worst trade in the league per se. Now, if you want to know a little bit more about the Russell Wilson situation, I did do a video highlighting all of that. It'll be here. I'll have a link up so you guys can go check that out. And yeah, let's go ahead and just jump right into it, man. So 2021 Cleveland Browns, they just finished their season with Baker Mayfield as their quarterback, and there's a lot of discussion as to pretty much how they're going to move about into the offseason. They had just picked up Baker's fifth-year extension, or fifth-year rookie fifth-year option. There it is. I'm thinking extension. He hasn't had one yet, but he's going to get one. We'll talk about that later on. But yeah, the Browns end up picking up that fifth-year option for Baker Mayfield, and he ends up tearing his shoulder apart in the second game of the season, and then he tears it up even further when they're playing the Arizona Cardinals at home. And then afterwards, it's just a mess. Baker doesn't produce the way that he's supposed to. And everybody has this conundrum of, like, is Baker Mayfield still the guy? Is he not the guy? Do you bring somebody else behind him? Do you move on for him? Do you give him one more chance? Like, what's going to happen? Ultimately, Cleveland would go on. They would move off of Baker Mayfield. They would trade for Deshaun Watson from the Houston Texans. And the haul that they gave up Houston for Deshaun Watson was, at first, when it was stated, it was one of the biggest trade packages out there, and what they gave Deshaun Watson was pretty enormous of a deal itself. They would trade for Deshaun Watson, and they would receive a 6th-round pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, which, if you want to go ahead and check out the shorts here, I go into detail about how that 6th-round pick in this year's draft is no longer with Cleveland. They actually traded that out to Denver, ironically enough. This video is about Denver and Cleveland. They just did a trade with Denver for wide receiver Jerry Jeudy. Again, go ahead, check this short out. You'll get all the information there. But yeah, so they get a 2024 6th-round pick. They get Deshaun Watson, which they signed to a 5-year, $230 million fully guaranteed contract. Houston, in return, would get a 2022 1st-round pick and a 4th-round pick, a 2023 1st-round pick and a 3rd-round pick, and then a 2024 1st-round pick and a 4th-round pick. So let's go ahead and take a look at what Houston did with those draft picks. In 2022, with the 1st-round pick, they would pick up guard Kenyon Green out of Texas A&M. And in the 4th round, they would pick up running back Dameon Pierce out of Florida. Dameon Pierce, Kenyon Green, both would be vital parts of the offense that we would see going into this season, because in 2023, you would have the Houston Texans picking 2nd overall in the draft, and they would pick up quarterback C.J. Stroud out of The Ohio State, offensive rookie of the year, probably one of the best rookie campaigns that we've seen in the NFL thus far. And all of that, guard Kenyon Green, Dameon Pierce, you got C.J. Stroud, and then in the 1st-round pick, right after C.J. Stroud was picked up, you have defensive end Will Anderson Jr. out of Alabama. And then in the 3rd round, you got a vital piece of the offense, which I believe was a key proponent, a key piece for C.J. Stroud to have the best rookie campaigns we've ever seen. Wide receiver Tank Dell out of Houston. Him along with Nico Collins, Dalton Schultz. That was, I believe, one of the more formidable offenses that we've seen, one of the more explosive offenses that we've seen in the league. And it's only going to get better because Houston has a 1st-round pick and a 4th-round pick from Cleveland that they're going to be using in the 2024 NFL Draft this year. So they can only go up from here. I mean, again, Cleveland, they did play Houston in the wild card round. Houston basically went up and just took over that game entirely and just pretty much shined a very, very bright spotlight on what's to come in Houston. Cleveland, on the other hand, with Deshaun Watson, how did they fare? Well, Deshaun Watson would miss 11 games out of the 2022 season due to a suspension. But in the 6 games that he did get to play in the 2022 season, he threw for 1,102 yards, 7 touchdowns, and 5 interceptions. He had a 58.2 completion percentage, a 79.1 rating, and a 40.4 QBR. In 2023, he would also play 6 games, but due to injury, he would sit out and miss the rest of the year. And again, that's where you see Dorian Thompson-Robinson come into play, Josh Dobbs coming into play, and then ultimately Joe Flacco would come into play and lead the team into the postseason. But in the 6 games that Deshaun Watson would play with Cleveland, he would throw for 1,115 yards passing, 7 touchdowns to 4 interceptions. He had a 61.4 completion percentage, 84.3 rating, and a 42.9 QBR. Again, look at the numbers for both seasons. Eerily identical, eerily similar, touchdowns to interceptions. Completion percentage was a little bit higher in 2023. The rating was a little bit higher. The QBR was a little bit higher, but overall, just pretty much the same type of production that you got from the first 6 games that he played in 22 to this year. Just, it wasn't much of an improvement, but, you know, there was some flashes shown, but like nothing was really shown. Nothing really stood out to make you think that Deshaun Watson was the guy that Cleveland thought they were going to get, you know, coming out of Houston. And I believe a lot of people are still expecting to see that 2020 Deshaun Watson, where he throws for like 4,000 yards on a 4-12 Houston team and pretty much carried that team offensively for the most part. That's something that everybody's waiting to see happen. And with the addition of Jerry Jeudy now coming into Cleveland, I believe that we might see that, but that's still yet to be decided. But now let's look into Seattle and Denver. Like, what did Denver give up to get Russell Wilson? And what did Seattle receive? Well, Seattle would get the 2022 1st round, 2nd round, and 5th round pick, and a 2023 1st round and 2nd round pick, as well as getting quarterback Drew Lock, defensive tackle Shelby Harris, and tight end Noah Fant. Who did Seattle get with those picks? In 2022, they would pick up Charlie Cross, offensive tackle out of Mississippi State, with the 1st round pick. They would pick up outside linebacker Boye Mafe from Minnesota with the 2nd round pick. And then they would pick up outside linebacker Tyreek Smith from the Ohio State. And then in 2023, they would pick up cornerback Devin Witherspoon out of Illinois with that 1st round pick. And then in the 2nd round, they would pick up edge rusher Derek Hall out of Auburn. And again, Denver would pick up a 4th round pick by way of that trade with Seattle, along with Russell Wilson. They ended up signing Russell Wilson to a 5-year, $242.5 million deal with 161 in total guarantees, $124 million guaranteed at signing. Let me say that again. $161 million in total guarantees with $124 million guaranteed at signing. And they also had that 4th round pick that was traded to them with Russell Wilson, which they used on defensive lineman Ioma Uwazurike from Iowa State, who, by the way, has yet to play a snap in the league because he is currently suspended indefinitely due to violating the NFL's gambling policy. He is going to be able to petition for reinstatement July 24th of this year. And again, I can go into the stats for both years that Russell Wilson was in Denver. I did that already, but just a quick recap. In 2022, he played 15 games. He threw for 3,524 yards passing, 16 touchdowns to 11 interceptions, 60.5 completion percentage, 84.4 rating, and a 38.7 QBR. And in 2023, he played another 15 games. He threw for 3,070 yards passing, 26 touchdowns to 8 interceptions, a 66.4 completion percentage, a 98 rating, and a 50.7 QBR. Statistically, a better year in 2023 than it was in 2022, but he would end up being benched for the last 2 games due to the whole contract situation between him and the Denver Broncos. And now that Russell Wilson has been pretty much released, he's been able to meet with several teams. He's met with Pittsburgh. He's met with the Giants. He's scheduled to be meeting up with a few other teams as well. The Denver Broncos are having to eat a good chunk of that deal now. They have to pretty much take on a record-setting $85 million in dead cap after that release. And this is just coming off of a year where the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they just took on, I believe it was like $74 or $76 million in dead cap after the Tom Brady retirement that happened. And there was a few other signings that played along into that dead cap, but a majority of it was due to Tom Brady and his retirement. So seeing one team pretty much take on dead cap money in what was supposed to be a rebuilding year, they end up making an NFC South championship run. They end up making an NFC divisional playoff run. And now we're seeing pretty much the same thing happen, except with way more money and not a lot left to be given out. Not enough play for Denver to have. They're pretty much having to pretty much reset and get things going in a new direction now with the ownership, Sean Payton as head coach and whatnot. It makes you wonder on who had it worse. Did Cleveland have it worse or did Denver have it worse? And if you look at both sides with everything that I've shared and how everything is played out, ultimately, I want to throw it up as a tie. And the only reason I'm saying it's a tie is because both sides, they have this, they both took a hit in 2 separate areas. On one side with Cleveland, you got a guy who has played a combined 12 games, a total of 2,217 yards passing, 14 touchdowns to 11 interceptions, probably a 59.7 completion percentage, average rating of about maybe 81, 82, and a QBR of just about 40. That's just mental mathing it, just estimating. Don't take that as fully like concrete. That was just me just putting the numbers together real quickly and whatnot. But yeah, that's a guy who's played 2 seasons in Cleveland sparsely. He hasn't played a full season yet. And then you have in Denver a guy who's played pretty much the entirety of 2 seasons, but yet hasn't produced the way that he would hope for. Granted, like, you look at the whole situation in Denver, you had one head coach that was brought in to pretty much bring in another guy. That didn't happen, so they trade for Russell Wilson. That first year didn't pan out properly. Then you bring in another head coach that you would think would help kind of turn the tides and get the offense going. A guy that pretty much said that he would be shocked if they didn't make the playoffs. They didn't make the playoffs, and there was a whole lot of turmoil going into it, and it just seemed like the tides were turning against Russell Wilson entirely. It seemed like the team didn't want him, and now he's no longer with the team, and now the Broncos are having to eat this big chunk of money that they can't get rid of, and Russell Wilson is free to sign with whoever on a minimum deal. He's going to get paid by the Broncos, and he's going to be making a minimum deal, a minimum vet deal with another team. It's pretty much a bargain for whoever signs him. So I look at the 2 situations, and I'm like, I mean, yeah, Deshaun Watson has a fully guaranteed deal that the Browns really can't get away from. But they seem like they're committing to Deshaun Watson regardless of the entire situation. While Russell Wilson, he's no longer with the team entirely. So maybe Denver has it worse. Now that I think about it, Denver has the worst of it. I believe that when you talk about the worst trades ever, Denver possibly has the worst trade in the NFL as a whole, where it stands right now. But I want to hear from you guys, the viewers. Who do you think got it worse? Do you think the Cleveland Browns got it worse? Or do you think the Denver Broncos got it worse? Ooh. Let me know down below in the comment section. Let me hear your thoughts. And just talk to me. Let me know what y'all think. It goes either one of 2 ways. Denver got it worse. Cleveland got it worse. However way you see fit, it's bad all the way around. But it looks like for one team, they're sticking with it, and they're on the up and coming. They're up and coming, while the other team, they're just going to be in a perpetual rebuild for what could be the next few years. But with all that being said, with all that thought being put out, man, let me know what y'all think. It's your boy, Westside Izzy P, Izzy Phantasmo. You've been locked into a brand new episode of Westside Sports. Again, comment down below, like, comment, subscribe, share, tell all your friends to tell a friend to check this out, man. I will catch y'all later on. Y'all stay tuned. I'll see y'all soon. Peace.
No, I can't go back. Tryna live my old ways.